Greetings, Gilliam the Rogue here once again. It's been quite some time since I've made a dedicated video, and I missed it a lot, but I decided to do something special for the 10K sub mark that I've hit on YouTube. Thank you everyone who's made this journey possible so far, and especially those who have enabled me to go leaps and bounds in terms of upping my game with content creation, making the green screen, purchasing a better microphone, upgrading, going through different softwares and stuff. I'm still a noob when it comes to editing, and this video will definitely show. It's not going to be anything fancy like some people and content creators can do when making YouTube videos where they have flashy animations and stuff coming in and out and overlaying. I'm still looking for ways to improve. If you have suggestions on software and ways to do that, I am always open to that because I want to make sure that I produce as best quality as I can for this content. But again, this is going to be something a little bit sillier. It's going to be very simple. I'm going to answer questions that I've been asked on Twitter, social media, like forums, my Patreon, my Discord, all that sorts of stuff. So I'll have some footage in the background. It'll be random gameplay from me doing BGs, PvP, whatever it is, just dinking around. So don't expect anything phenomenal from the background gameplay. It's just there as filler for your eyes. Again, I'll be answering questions, but they won't be shown on screen. I'm just going to be talking about them because I'm, again, not very good at editing, as many of you know. But again, thank you everyone who's just made this possible. I would never have guessed that I would be doing this 1 year ago, sort of thing. It was just something that I like to do. I really like helping people learn. It's something that I've always been passionate about. It's just helping people and spending my time learning so that I can teach and go beyond. So really thank you everyone who's made this become more than just a hobby and something a little bit more where I've actually been able to put food on the table and feed myself, sort of thing, while also paying bills. So thanks for letting me be a human being, I guess. I really appreciate it. I don't know how to put it into better words. But again, let's get into the video. Our first question comes from Mel on Twitter, and she asks, tell us something that you did as a kid that your parents never found out about. This isn't so much something that I did, more something that happened to me. And when I was about 16 or 17 years old, I actually died. And I never told my parents because it was really stupid and I never wanted to worry them. What happened was I fell asleep with a bandana on my mouth, which is probably something that you've heard a lot not to do because you can suffocate in your sleep. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I actually lost oxygen for about 10 minutes. And I had to be resuscitated. And it's actually impacted me a little bit in terms of short-term memory, and it's why I can't remember people's names or events that happen in my life in terms of short-term. So it's really hard for me to recall things that happen on a mundane base-to-base unless it's highly impacted my life or had sort of a thought-provoking experience for me. So I know that was a little bit dark, but that was a pretty hard question to answer in terms of thinking about something interesting that also wouldn't get me in trouble with the law. So yeah, next question. Casual Ranger on Twitter asks, Miracle Whip or mayonnaise? I really like mayonnaise because it's a very versatile tool in terms of getting flavors because it can be mixed really well with lots of things. And while I'm no chef or guru or anything like that, I do know a lot about science and I do like experimenting a lot. And I'm also the chef, I guess, in my family in terms of cooking, and I really like experimenting with stuff. And mayonnaise is a much more malleable substance in terms of delivering unique flavors, while Miracle Whip is a very aggressive, sweet and tangy sort of thing. So I'm not saying Miracle Whip is bad, but in terms of what I like doing by trying out new things and making food for people, mayonnaise is definitely better at doing that. The next question comes from Nori on Twitter, and they ask, how do you see the future of ESO? I personally think that ESO is doing extremely well in terms of a business and will continue pumping out content for at least another 2 years, and good content at that. I do realize that the game is filled with flaws and there are a lot of issues, especially from the endgame perspective, and I would love to see a lot of those fixed, but I also realize that the endgame community doesn't necessarily dictate the bill paying of a business these days. A lot of people are going to a more revolving door aspect, and while I really detest it, I also understand from a business perspective the incentive to doing so. Elder Scrolls Online has always tried to maintain a really hearty balance of both of them, and it's ultimately failed to do really good at one or the other. So they're kind of in this really weird passing, and I believe the Morrowind patch has kind of brought us into line with the developers' commitment to the game and the longevity in terms of, while we don't agree with what they do, we at least see that they're building something. We see it in Horns of the Reach, we saw it in Morrowind, and we saw it in some of the balance changes pre-Morrowind, where they're doing really crazy changes before the impact of why they need to do it happens. So they're really good at planning ahead. Their only issue is in terms of deliverance, transparency, and making sure that we get there, sort of thing. So a lot of the changes that they do may seem detrimental to the game, but are actually planning ahead into the future, getting ready for some really big changes that need those things to happen. So with that in mind, I think that the game will do pretty well for quite some time. I don't want this game to die, and I'm trying to give as much feedback as possible, but I also understand that I'm one person, and that even though we want things, you can never please everyone. So you have to be very level-headed about the approach and realize that all things come to an end, sort of thing. So will ESO die one day? Yes, but will we all also die one day? Yeah. Is it going to die anytime soon? No, I think it's going to do well. It's already seeing big improvements in terms of business aspects, like they're making a lot more people come in. But I guess we'll have to see, sort of thing. I'm not holding my breath to see any revolutionary changes, but I am also very hopeful, and I'm definitely confident in saying that ESO will do well for quite some time still. The next question comes from Xavius on Twitter, and he says, what changes would you make in-game if you could change anything for a week? The biggest change that I would make to the game for a week is a stealth system rework, and I would really like to see how the community would respond to it. But I want stealth to be a really cool experience for both the enemy and the doer, so whoever is doing it and whoever is receiving it. So instead of being this really frustrating experience as it is in PvP, it would be a more interesting and thought-provoking experience for both the user and the receiver in terms of, okay, how do I apply really cool, interesting ways to use stealth, and also how do I have really cool ways to counter stealth, while also really rewarding a gameplay element in PvE. So having a system that could work in both and also be really skill-based, I would love to see that work. I have talked about it a lot. I have lots of suggestions about it. So that's definitely what I would change for a week personally, and see how people would react. Xavius also asks, how do you know when to heavy attack? Heavy attacking is a very important concept in Morrowind and continues to grow in importance due to resource management. And the one thing that happens a lot with players is they either heavy attack too much and do too little DPS, or heavy attack too little and do no DPS, because you need resources. So it's a really hard balance, and a lot of it comes down to understanding the fight at hand and realizing when and when not to make decisions. So it's a very reaction-based element that you have to learn over time from doing mechanics and stuff. So the biggest thing that I can suggest is utilize heavy attacks in positive ways that help your DPS, but also get the end goal achieved. So if you're using things like two-handers or lightning staves, you have really good cleave DPS because your heavy attacks splash to additional targets, and you can actually out DPS using a spammable such as like Sap Essence or Talons or something, because of how powerful they are. So utilize heavy attacks by using their strength based on certain weapons, kind of carry them around and realize, oh, hey, are we going to be fighting a lot of adds? Maybe I want a two-hander instead of dual wield or something. The other thing is utilize heavy attacks in moments of reprieve. So when you're doing a mechanic and you have to back off from that boss to get out of the red, or he's going to be invincible and he's got a few adds lying around, use heavy attacks to get resources back instead of just sitting around and waiting, doing nothing. Really understand the tide of combat sort of thing, where you have to back off, get out of the red. So like Rakat doing Lunar Slam or Serpent doing World Shaper, those are perfect moments when you should be heavy attacking instead of just running out of the mechanic. You can do both at the same time, so you can get resources back so you can do DPS when you're ready to go back in. So those are two of my biggest suggestions, is understand combat and utilize the efficiencies or bonuses that some of these weapons have access to. The next question comes from Luke, and he asks, why is that people continually ask the same question, such as, is X gear better than Y? Do you like answering the same questions 200 times a week? I have a very level-headed approach to this situation, and I realize that most people don't know who I am or don't have access to the information that I provide, because I'm one small person in this humongous world. And furthermore, using one source is never a good idea. You should always look for more. So when people ask me questions, I know that it's not because they're always going to be lazy. Yeah, some people are, and they're not going to read a guide or watch the video that has the answers to their questions within the first 5 minutes, so I ignore those. But to the people who ask more thought-based questions where it's like, hey, I've heard that this is better here, I've been having a hard time deciding, I try and give very thought-based answers that are very contextual to the individual. So it's not really answering the same question because it changes from individual, and I try and make sure that they learn. So it's not really a bother to me because I'm getting two things done with answering questions. I'm making sure the person is pleased with their answer, and I'm also trying to make them learn at the same time so they'll never have to ask that sort of question again, because they'll have the information at hand in order to make that decision for themselves. The next question comes from James Williams on Twitter, and he asks, is Khajiit your favorite because of passives that synergize nicely, or is there some lore-related reason? A little unknown fact, I actually came from WoW. For about 10 years I played the game religiously, and I was a rogue in that game, and I really wanted something like that in Elder Scrolls Online. I love the rogue playstyle in all of the games that I play, and I saw the Breton hero in the cinematic, and I fell in love. I wanted to be that person because he was a badass. He was jumping around, killing people, doing roguey things, and he wasn't a direct fighter. Like when he fought the Nord in that scene, he was using trickery, being very smart, kind of underhanded blows sort of thing, by using things to his advantage because he didn't have the powerful elements. He couldn't overpower him and that sort of stuff. So I wanted to be that. When I got into early access, I realized that Bretons were not good at being Nightblades, and being the min-maxer that I was, especially from WoW, where I sat hours in spreadsheets trying to maximize my DPS and looking through things, I really wanted something that could do that while also looking cool, and that came to the Khajiit. It had 10% crit hit damage at the time, and I was like, alright, well, crit is always important no matter what, and crit hit damage is amazing, so I'll go with this. And while it wasn't the best race at the time, and still arguably isn't the best race, I was able to get a good goal in terms of appearance because I really like how lions look with being kind of majestic and imposing. So I kind of spent a long time, about 4 hours, making Gilliam into an appearance that I appreciated while also having that mathematical advantage. So no, there's no lore-related reason. I'm not really into the whole Khajiit lore archetype. Some of it's interesting, but it's more because of passives and also being able to get the best of both worlds with, oh yeah, I look pretty cool like a lion sort of thing. The next question comes from Santasvella in my Discord, and he asks, what's your vision for the game? I actually have a very loaded vision for this game because I'm so in love with it, and I want it to go beyond what it's capable of, because this game has immense potential. It's one of the most technical games and rewarding games that I've ever played from a combat element, and also just being filled with really cool, rich lore and stuff to do. So my goal for the game is to ease the access to endgame community, because that's what kind of player I am. I'm an endgame player. I love raiding, I love doing PvP, I love doing things the best of the best way possible and just doing all of the content at hand. And I realize not everyone wants to do that, but I also realize that there's no good way that the game allows you to learn, so if you want to do it, I read questions and hear comments and just a lot of discussion about, I want to get into raiding, or I want to get into dungeons and I can't do it. What am I doing wrong? How do I learn? And it's such a pity that there's no internal game systems that teach players really important things. Like, there's no tutorial for weaving. There's no explanation of animation canceling. There's no explanation of penetration or crit hit damage. There's no information in this game that allows players looking to learn to go and have this source of information. It's completely reliant on the community. And while I like the community being a part of helping the community grow, I also don't want it to be the only source, because it's a very draining thing. Misinformation happens. There's no right or wrong because there's no check mark list saying, hey, yeah, that's right, or hey, no, that's wrong. So my vision for the game is to see transparency increase and really increase the amount of information given to the players so that they can learn and go beyond what they're capable of, because they have these tools that support them and just help them make more fun out of the game, just more experience. They can make more sense. They can do more things. And it's less about, oh, hey, am I doing something wrong? Is this me or is it the game? What is it, sort of thing? So information, learning, those are my main goals. And it's why I focus so much on it and like answering silly questions and stuff like that. The next and final question comes from Inalis, and she asks, what damage types are there? How can I see what damage type a skill does? And is magic damage good for all magic types? So there are many damage types in the Elder Scrolls Online, and it's a very heavy topic, so I'm going to try and keep things short. In terms of physical resistance, those will reduce damage from physical, poison, and disease attacks. Meanwhile, spell resistance will reduce the damage from ice, flame, shock, and magic. When something says it increases magic damage, it only applies to the magic damage modifier, so magic damage. So like things like funnel health. Things like Wall of Elements don't do magic damage, so magic damage amps will not increase them. So it's very straightforward with what it's trying to say. If it says it increases magic damage, then it applies to magic damage, not things like lightning, flame, or ice, or stuff like that. So it's pretty straightforward, but I do understand that there's a lot of confusing tooltips in the game, and sometimes tooltips straight out lie. So it's kind of understanding what they're trying to say, testing them, getting more feedback from other players. A lot of it comes down to really understanding the game. So things like Silks of the Sun, it says it increases flame damage, spell damage by 400. So people might think, oh, hey, maybe Grothdar gets some extra damage, but Grothdar doesn't have a spell damage coefficient. It deals flat damage based on its tooltip that doesn't scale, so Silks of the Sun wouldn't apply to it. So it's all about understanding how some of these internal calculations work, and while there's no perfect thing in-game that tells you that, which is why I want to see more of them, you can still kind of figure out and test on your own times. Oh, hey, I'll drink a potion. Does it buff this ability? If it doesn't, probably doesn't work the same way with this skill, sort of thing. So it comes down to really being able to test, understand, or have access to someone who can do that for you, sort of thing. So that's all of the questions. I had more, but I don't have enough time to fit them all in, so I'm trying to answer them. If you have more, feel free to ask in the comment section. I'll answer with comments. But really, thank you everyone who's allowed me to reach this goal, do silly things like this, and kind of allow me to grow into something more than just an information provider. I'm really, really thankful that I'm allowed to be a part of this growth experience and help people enjoy more out of their hobby and have fun with life, because so much of everyday stuff is dreary, negative, blah, 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 and it's really something special to be a part of something positive. So thanks.